Frank, let me know what you think about this. Rode and I were talking about this yesterday, and we agreed that switch hitters are some of the most valuable assets in all of sports. No matter what happens, they always have the advantage. Do you agree?
Not every switch hitter is a great hitter, so generally speaking, yes.
Okay, well, I'm just telling you that I think that they are so versatile. I can almost guarantee you that all switch hitters can walk and chew gum at the same time. Episode number 47 of the Mets Weekly Podcast, 60 Minutes of Brutal Honesty, begins right now. Now, as for your usual house cleaning, make sure to subscribe to the Mets Weekly channel for the premiere of this very podcast every single Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Follow us on Twitter, TikTok, as well as all of our individual links that are in the description. Speaking of TikTok and other content, if you haven't caught up with us since the season started, Frank has been doing 1-minute post-game thoughts called the Mets Frankly Postgame to play on Mets Weekly, obviously. And ever since then, Frank, you were not here last week, so there's only so much you can say in 1 minute. So now you get to rant with the rest of us this week.
I would have had a lot more to say last week when we were on like the 0 for 5. They've won a couple of games. They won a series, so it's not as much, season over, world is ending, but there's still plenty of things to, as you said, rant about.
There's actually a lot of things I'm encouraged by. At the end of the day, we're the Mets. I'm sure, I really hope that these trends continue. I am very cautiously optimistic about this Mets team right now.
It couldn't have been any worse of a week from last week, so I'm glad that it was better. But of course, there were the positives and the negatives, and we're going to get into them right now as we recap the games. Starting off with the early series this week against the Tigers. On Monday night, Sean Manaea made his Mets debut and was lights out. 1 hit, 0 earned runs, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts on 88 pitches. Manaea's fastball sat at 93 to 94 and topped 96 miles an hour at 55% usage, registering 13 total whiffs with his arsenal. Despite Manaea's strong effort, the Mets offense was near silent all game long, taking a scoreless contest into extras. Mets reliever Michael Tonkin came on for the 10th, and it was not pretty. Runners at the corners with 1 out. Ground ball is booted by second baseman Joey Wendell as the ghost runner comes across to make it 1-0 Detroit. Former Met Javier Baez would later on add to the lead with a sacrifice fly to make it 2-0 Tigers, followed by the final gut punch as Carson Kelly launched a 3-run homer to left field, putting the game out of reach and giving the Mets an 0-4 start to 2024. After back-to-back days of rain cancellation, the final 2 games of the series were pushed to a day-night doubleheader, and in the first Thursday game, Adrian Hauser made his Mets debut. The Mets bats would attack first in the 3rd inning as Mets rising star catcher Francisco Alvarez roped a RBI double down the left field line, knocking in a pair of runs to make it 2-0 Mets. Then in the 5th, Mets third baseman Brett Baty added to the lead with an RBI single to make it 3-0 New York. After running into trouble in the 6th, Hauser's day was cut short after just 67 pitches, going 5 innings pitched, 3 hits, 1 earned run, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts. Hauser's sinker 4-seam combo sat at 91 to 92, top 94 miles an hour, doing what he does best, inducing 7 ground balls and registering 8 total whiffs. Fast forward to the 8th inning, the Mets up 3-1. Adam Ottavino surrenders a 2-run homer to Riley Green to tie the game at 3, eventually sending us to extras once again after the Mets failed to capitalize in the 9th. Fast forward to the top of the 11th, Michael Tonkin came into the game for Jorge Lopez, and it was a case of deja vu. 2 on, 1 out. Colt Keith drove in the lead run with an RBI double, and Gio Urshela added to the lead with a 2-run single to make it 6-3 Detroit. The Mets would get the tying run to the plate in the bottom of the inning for Pete Alonso, but Shelby Miller would strike out the Mets slugger to secure the series victory to knock the orange and blue to 0-5. But in the series finale and the second game of the doubleheader, 27th man and pitcher Jose Budo would get the start and was really good. 6 innings pitched, 3 hits, 1 earned run, 3 walks, 6 strikeouts on 90 pitches. Budo's fastball sat at 92 to 93 on a cold day and topped 94 miles an hour on 31% usage, registering 12 total whiffs. Reed Garrett would come on in relief, tossing 3 scoreless innings with 4 strikeouts, but for the majority of the game, the Mets offense was nowhere to be found as the Tigers took a no-hitter into the 8th before Harrison Bader broke it up with a bloop single to left. Fast forward to the last of the 9th, Mets slugger Pete Alonso brought life back to the offense with a solo shot to left, his second of the year, to tie the game at 1. Brett Baty would follow it up with a walk before Starling Marte bunted him over to second, setting up Tyrone Taylor to drive in the winning run on an RBI single to walk off the Tigers and salvage the last game of the series, leading the Mets to their first win of 2024 and Carlos Mendoza's first win of his managerial career.
Probably the main takeaway is that Michael Tonkin is absolutely terrible. I mean, that's really what it comes down to as one of the main things. And of course, like, and really in that first game, could you score a run, like a single run? I mean, that's the thing that is probably the most frustrating is that, you see the stats, best team ERA, starters, number 1 in the league, all this other stuff. That's great and all, but when the offense is scoring 0 runs and you have to go to extra innings and, you have Michael Tompkins coming in with these blow-ups, it makes it really impossible to win, honestly. And what really is crazy to me is that, like, opening day, because I wasn't here for this, but opening day, you had, again, Tyrone Taylor batting cleanup. And then now you look at Tyrone Taylor's batting like 7th or 8th, and it's just kind of like, why was he batting cleanup to begin with? I mean, this lineup, like when it gets posted, you're like, why? And then all of a sudden the game happens and then it goes back to the way it's supposed to be. And it's like, well, why was it like that to begin with? And, you look at this in the first game where you had DJ Stewart batting in between Alvarez, Marte, and Baty. And Stewart gives you absolutely nothing. But you had, Marte giving you a couple hits. Baty gives you a hit. And with the offense that's struggling so much and the hits are kind of sporadic and all over the place, they have now, you don't see that anymore. Now Stewart bats 9th and you have Baty bats after Alvarez and you have Marte right there. So it's like when these guys get hits, they can string them together. It leads to a run. And it's like, if they had just done that earlier and just kept Stewart in the 9-hole where, honestly, he shouldn't even be on the team. That's where he should be batting. I mean, he should be batting, just not in this organization.
Oh, I'll tell you one thing. I'm ready to start campaigning if we see like one more fuck up from DJ Stewart to campaigning before JD Martinez gets here to bring up G-Man Choi. Because this is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's fair. I mean, you really got a point there because not only does he do nothing offensively, but his defense in the field, it's not worth carrying him on the roster. It's not, we could play the effort. Not really. There's nothing there. And, you have guys like Zach Short is like your pinch runner now, whatever. I mean, it's like you can just find so much more value of a roster spot than guy DJ Stewart because his bat is so bad. You start him at DH and he's terrible. You would never pinch hit this guy. I mean, I hate Harrison Bader more than anyone could hate a player, but I still wouldn't bat DJ Stewart over him, like to pinch hit. Like that's how low I think of DJ Stewart as well. That like the guy's just wasting a roster spot, and I just don't get why it's like the lineup. It's like it's just taking like these complete 180s day in, day out. It's like these guys are at the top, now they're at the bottom. Now this guy's at the bottom. Like it's so inconsistent. And it's like now it looks like they finally have a little bit of a rhythm. Like I said, just putting Alvarez up, putting Baty up. But to me, it's that I just don't get why they had it like that in the first place. I just think that they put way too much stock into DJ Stewart's one good month and really overlooked his bad month. And more importantly, his entire career before being with the Mets, to put him in these opportunities where he's batting like high in the lineup in it, like we're supposed to have like an impact player spot. And it's just weird to me because you have these games where you score 0 runs and it's like just those simple adjustments of moving DJ Stewart down earlier. Maybe you get a run and you win a game because the fact that it went 0-0 into the 10th is really crazy to me. And then, the same thing goes for the next game. It's like, just during regulation, you're that one more run away from winning the game and not having to go to extra innings. I just think that, the offense struggling, it has more repercussions than just like, oh, you didn't score runs. But it also is going to hurt the bullpen by making them have to go to extra innings because your offense can't get the job done. So, your offense being bad is one thing, but it's also affecting your pitching in the long term by having to use these guys more than you should. So it's been frustrating. And to me, the main thing is that it's crazy that they were willing So let's just say, for the sake of argument, that JD Martinez did get that like 2-year contract from the Marlins, or any team for that matter, that they were going to go into this season with the lineup like this. Maybe you could sub in Mark Vientos and again hope that he does in the big league level, but if they were going to do this platoon stuff and all this other stuff, like this is what you were going to see, and they were okay with that, and this was the plan. That's concerning to me, because from what I've seen with so many of the hitters in this lineup, I'm like, oh my gosh. And we talked about the line the entire offseason. It's worse than I thought. And Nimmo's going to get better. I'm not worried about that. But oh my God, most of the time it's like it's rough to watch these guys, especially when there's runners on base. I mean, I get, we'll talk about again in Cincinnati, but what they have to do now to score runs is like that should never be the game plan. Like the approach that they have to take just to score a run is just, it's embarrassing.
Especially with the Detroit series, because the offense did come alive a little bit as compared to the Detroit series with Cincinnati. We'll get into that. But the only thing keeping me sane watching this lineup is the fact that you see them strand all these runners on base, screw up all these opportunities. All I see is JD Martinez and his beautiful smile in my head. I'm just waiting for it. Like, I really just, that's literally all I'm relying on right now, which really, really sucks.
I was starting to get heavily in favor of signing JD Martinez regardless, but let's say that they didn't do it. Let's say Vientos was the full-time DH right now. There is going to be some massive positive regression between Nimmo, Lindor, and Alonso. Alonso has not produced so far this year. He's had 2 homers, 2 really big homers, which is great. But besides that, he's kind of struggled a little bit. And, that obviously, I don't expect that to keep playing out. Nimmo's been incredibly unlucky. His ex-WOBA is in the 400s, so I really am not worried about Nimmo at all. Like, Lindor has also been unlucky, but he also hasn't looked good, if that makes sense. He hasn't been hitting like 070 bad, like true talent. But, he has been underwhelming, but we know he can hit. He's a 115 to 120 bat. McNeil is not going to hit as bad as he has been. League average should maybe a little bit more. And obviously Pete's, I think, is one of the 15 best hitters in baseball at his true talent. You never know what Vientos is going to give you. I mean, he did lead the team in homers in spring training. I know it's spring training, but the reason why I am cautiously optimistic about this team, which I guess we could talk about more, is that there's going to be crazy positive regression from a lot of these hitters, and you're getting one of the best hitters in baseball coming into your lineup very soon. This rotation has been unbelievable. Like last week, I was panicking. Like I was talking about Severino, how worried I am. Severino shut me up. He shut me up in the Cincinnati series, which we'll get into, and I'm so happy about that. Shamanai is a dog. This guy, I'm so happy we signed him, and I always had a really good feeling about Shamanai. His sequencing is just so much better than it used to be. First start, I believe he would tunnel his four-seam, which had crazy run with his changeup, and those pitches tunnel really well. From his arm slot, like, it's just a nasty. His fastball, especially with the increased velo, is kind of nasty. Like, I can't lie. Like, it might not have the vertical approach, but it's not really supposed to with his arm angle. It has a lot of run. It's really difficult to distinguish it from that arm angle. He gets strikeouts, man.
He added a cutter too.
He added a cutter. Like, and without like the cutter itself, if Manaea hangs his cutter, it's gonna get destroyed, I think, because on its own, his cutter is not a great pitch. But he needs that cutter in order for the sweeper to work. Like, location is so important. And I think in a game where we're seeing all these pitchers getting hurt, and I love velocity, I love my high velo guys, but I feel like there has to be more of an emphasis on command. Command is just as important as stuff in today's game. That is how it works. In the playoffs, pitchers who don't give up homers, who are able to hit their spots, play well. Look at a guy like Jordan Montgomery. Impeccable command all postseason. His stuff is so majorly improved, and I'm just so happy with what I've seen. And a guy like Adrian Hauser, if Hauser can give me a 4.20 ERA, I will be more than happy. And he looked great in his first start. He was commanding the ball well. He's not going to strike people out. But Adrian Hauser is what he is. I love the trade. Tyrone Taylor has served his role here. I've loved his defense despite, that mishap yesterday. Stearns' pitching lab has honestly exceeded my expectations. And if it weren't for that Milwaukee Brewers series, like, I wouldn't have any concerns about this pitching staff as of now. It's still so early, but, there's a lot of things to look forward to especially with Kodai Senga coming back. And this Tiger series was a showcasing of how good our pitching kind of is. With Tonkin, I'm glad Tonkin got DFA. Full respect to him. He's worked his way back to the MLB. He's one of the arms that we could do without. The offense is not going to be this bad. Especially with one of the best hitters in the game coming to our lineup, the positive regression. The pitching's been phenomenal. I think there's things to really look forward to.
I don't really want to say much on this Tigers series because I kind of want to look at this whole week as a whole and get more into depth with the Red series. But one thing that I will say, kind of picking apart from some of these games, obviously Sean Manaea, there is going to be a time, in my opinion, I feel like, because he's done it before, but with the accelerated stuff that he has, with how quick that he has been able to register out, how just much confidence he has in his entire arsenal, I would not be surprised if you see him carry a few no-hitters into the 7th or 8th this year for us, if he gets that sort of volume, if his pitch count does not go as high. Michael Tonkin, at a second I felt bad for him because he got screwed. I was like, okay, maybe, this guy is all right, bat around with hard luck, and then seconds after, Carson Kelly clears the left field seats, and I'm like, okay, yeah, this guy ain't good. There was some shitty luck to him. Specifically, let me ask you something. If you want my first overreaction of the season, here it is. What does Joey Wendell do? He was brought in, again, and I'll get into the defense later again in the Cincinnati series because I'm trying to push as much as I can down. He was brought in as one of the run prevention infielders, one of the guys who can play second base, shortstop, third base, and more on the base pass as compared to somebody like Luis Guillorme. In the perfect time when we needed him to do it, the lead run was probably going to score anyway. The key is to only allow at least just one run in extra innings, and then you still have a chance. He allows the other team to get 2. And it gets even worse from there. From your defensive specialist, your run prevention. And then not to mention, the guy doesn't do anything at the plate. Even if you're going to call him a contact hitter, didn't he strike out 3 times? Not to mention the guy runs like a 1913 assembly line member created by Henry Ford. I don't understand the reason why he is here.
Personally, there's a number of players that I personally just don't know why Stearns put him on the team. Like Yohan Ramirez, I always was extremely confused why he made the bullpen. Joey Wendell is no different from Luis Guillorme. And the thing that has been so harmful to us thus far is our defense. Defense is so important. It is so important in this game. You have to make, or else you are not going to prevent runs. And you are going to put your pitchers in situations where they're going to run out of pitch counts, and that forces your bullpen to run into trouble. So yes, I don't know why Joey Wendell's on this team. I think there are so many other, have one of Zach Short or Joey Wendell, right? You don't need 2 of them.
That's the same feeling that I had last year when we had Mendick and Guillorme on here at the same time. It just didn't make any sense. I prefer to do 2 outfielders on the bench. That's just me because of the injury proneness in this outfield and how this roster is constructed. There were a lot of solid moves that were made by Stearns that could help us win in the margins as we have this transition year, so to speak. Joey Wendell was not one of them. That was one of the moves that I did not understand, and I still don't. He's not an everyday player, and he shouldn't be taking up that hole in the roster, in my opinion. I'm not what I'm seeing from Joey Wendell. I just don't think he's a good player whatsoever. So let's get into the second half of games this week, where the Mets traveled to Cincinnati for a 3-game set against the Reds. On Friday's series opener, Jose Quintana made his second start of the season and was solid. 5 2/3 innings, 5 hits, 1 earned run, 4 walks, 4 strikeouts on 102 pitches. Quintana's fastball-sinker combo sat at 89-90 and topped 91 miles an hour, registering 6 total whiffs and 7 ground balls to end his day. Down 1-0 in the 5th, Francisco Lindor drove in the tying run on a sacrifice fly, and Pete Alonso gave the Mets the lead on a costly blunder by Ellie De La Cruz to make it 2-1 Mets in the 7th. The call for insurance was then answered as Jeff McNeil blasted a solo shot to right, his first of the year, to make it 3-1 Mets in the 8th. And that insurance was very important, as Mets closer Edwin Diaz wasn't himself, but eventually locked it down, securing back-to-back wins for the Orange and Blue to take the series opener. On Saturday afternoon, Luis Severino got the start and was roughed up by the Mets defense early after miscues by Tyrone Taylor and Jeff McNeil to put the Mets down 2-0 in the second inning. But the big right-hander shoved from there, going 5 innings pitched, 3 hits, 1 earned run, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts on 90 9 pitches. Severino's fastball sat at 95 to 96 and topped 98 miles an hour at a 53% usage, showcasing much improved overall pitch shape compared to his debut and registering 16 total whiffs. The Mets offense came alive in the fourth. Bases loaded, 1 out. Omar Narvaez drove in 2 on an RBI single to right to tie the game. Brandon Nimmo followed it up with an RBI double to make it 4-2 Mets. Tyrone Taylor would also add to the lead with an RBI double in the fifth to make it 5-2, but the Reds would get 2 back in the sixth after a walk and hit by pitch issued by Jake Diekman, followed by a Stuart Fairchild RBI single and a double steal of home blunder by catcher Omar Narvaez to make it a 1-run game. But everything settled down. Wait, Mets baseball, I forgot. Bottom of the eighth inning, it was a complete meltdown. Yohan Ramirez stayed in the game for a second inning of work, a walk, a balk, wild pitch, an excuse me hit by De La Cruz to tie the game. Spencer Steer blasted a 3-run homer to give the Reds an 8-5 lead, a bunt single, a walk to load the bases, a sacrifice fly to make it 9-5 Reds. A complete 5-run inning meltdown put the game out of reach as the Mets lost the second game of the series 9-6. In Sunday's rubber game, Sean Manaea made his second start in 2024, was good, but only went 5 innings after a taxing 4, 3 hits, 1 earned run, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts on 92 pitches. Manaea's fastball sat at 93 to 94 and topped 96 miles an hour at 49% usage, registering 12 total whiffs across 5 serviceable weapons on full display. The Mets offense drove in their first run in the first inning of the season on an RBI single that was a deflected ground ball off of first baseman Christian Encarnacion Strand to give the Mets an early 1-0 lead. The Mets created traffic on the bases in the second, but only added 1 more after Brandon Nimmo was hit by the pitch with the bases loaded to make it 2-0 Mets. Fast forward to the fourth, Mets shortstop Francisco Lindor delivered his first home run of the year to make it 3-0 Mets, and with a 3-1 score going into the sixth, the Mets bullpen took care of it from there with scoreless innings from Jorge Lopez, Brooks Raley, Adam Ottavino, and Edwin Diaz to finish off the series victory in Cincinnati. The Mets are now 3-6 on the young season, set to begin a 3-game series with their division rival Braves in Atlanta to start the week. Okay, I have got a lot to talk about. I don't even think I'm going to be able to even get to every single point, but...
Well, we should have swept. I do have some early concerns about Carlos Mendoza. There was some very questionable bullpen decisions there. Like, Yohan Ramirez has never even gone 32 pitches. He threw over 40 in that 1 inning. Like, what was that? I'm sure Yohan Ramirez, if he were just, they treat him like a 1-inning reliever, I'm sure he'd be fine. Like, I was thinking, where was Jorge Lopez? They should have been warming him up.
He was supposed to close.
That's what I can't stand. Exactly.
Obviously,
it's like planning ahead before anything ever happens. It's like ridiculous. I can't stand that.
Why not give Teheran 1 inning, see if he can hold it up?
Because he was going to start on Monday.
But they were discussing him going length if Severino couldn't give it to you anyway. The second they put out Yohan Ramirez at the second inning, I knew we weren't winning the game. Like, I had accepted the loss, even though we were up 2, because like his sinker is genuinely nasty. He is not a major league high leverage reliever to me whatsoever. I've said this time and time again. He has 0 tunnel ability. He has really subpar command. He has insane velocity difference between his slider and sinker. It's not compatible. He might have nasty stuff, but until he adds a cutter and throws it, he is not going to be successful in the majors. He has never been successful in the majors. He has never got chases at the majors. I don't see personally in the data we're seeing why that would ever continue. Mendoza did not put him in the situation to play well. But besides that, the offense was fine. It was way better. The pitching held up a lot. Luis Severino was amazing. He was getting batted around the first game, but still there was unluck involved. He probably could have gone 6 if not for Zach Short's error. If Tyrone Taylor really messed him up, Jeff McNeil really messed him up that second inning, he could have definitely maybe even pushed it into the 7th. And his fastball had the life that in prior years. There were points where he was sitting 98. All his pitches are nasty. And his sinker looks great too. I think it's a great pitch to use against righties. And he's striking people out. Like, this is a different pitcher than last year. And I know last week I was saying the opposite things. Severino, I always have been of the opinion that if he's healthy, he's going to pitch fine. I think that's what we're seeing here. The first game was very cold outside. It was very windy, and that has to play a factor. Looked like the guy that we paid $13 million to get, the guy that Stern said would be an integral part of our rotation. I am a little concerned about Jose Quintana. Does his role fine. There are innings where he's sitting 88 now. If he doesn't have pinpoint command, it could become trouble. He can't be sitting below 90 to be effective. I didn't get into Jose Budo from the Tiger series. I honestly am ready to put him in the rotation over McGill. I love McGill. He's unreliable. I think it's that simple to me. McGill is just a roller coaster, and Budo has a large pitch mix. He has a feel for all his pitches, and he gets the job done, and that's what he did the other day. Manaea just looks so good. I know he had 2 tough innings today, but he managed to sacrifice only 1 run. I love his fastball. I love his sweeper, and that cutter is really going to be a big pitch for him as well, an underrated pitch that's going to help him be effective. Great series besides, the unfortunate unavailability of a lot of our relievers. A guy like Jake Diekman, there were trends even from our bullpen, even though they got the job done for the most part. Getting 2 guys out. Lopez did it today. Diekman did it yesterday. He actually sacrificed 2 runs.
Raley did it today too, I think.
Raley did it today. Yes, he did. This bullpen needs another high leverage guy. It's a solid bullpen. Stearns did a great job building the bullpen. It needs another high leverage guy. Jorge Lopez, his velo has been down from spring to now, but his sinker is a pretty good pitch still. It has a lot more run than it did last year, which is, I don't know if he's flip-flopping, maybe a different sinker grip. With the stuff decline that we have seen from Lopez, I would hope that his command would look a lot better, which it has. There were a lot of things to be encouraged by with this series. Lindor finally woke up. That's an amazing sign going to Atlanta tomorrow. Next, we just got to look to win 1 or 2 from Atlanta. You have to steal a game from Atlanta. And if the Mets could steal tomorrow from Atlanta by some improbable way, that would be incredible.
To me, I always look at it in the long term, and not even that long term. I'm looking at just these next couple of weeks. And it's just crazy to me that the Mets' main problem for this month is actually going to be the rain. That's really what it's going to come down to, is that you had this built-in off day of Friday when the season started, which got ruined because Thursday got rained out, so you played Friday. Then you had another game get rained out, so you had a doubleheader. The Mets do not have another off day until April 18th. That's a Thursday. So not this Thursday coming up. The next Thursday is their next off day. And on Saturday, already, the Mets bullpen is totally taxed. They had to leave Yohan Ramirez in there just to get shelled. Absolutely crushed. So you say, okay, fine. 1 game. It's 1 game, right? Let's not get too crazy about it. But what happens the next day? Sean Manaea goes 5 innings. You had to use your normal combination. Lopez, Raley, Ottavino, Diaz. What does that mean for tomorrow? Are those guys out again? And now Reed Garrett just has to go 3 innings
3
again?
out of 4 days they've pitched. So yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, so then it becomes 5 out of 6. And then they get a day off. And then it's going to be like, we can't use them Wednesday because they had to pitch Tuesday. You know what I mean? This is the situation we're in, where it's going to be if they're done, if they're maxed out on Saturday and still have almost another 2 weeks to pitch, how are they going to possibly do that? So between they have no off days because of the rain. No one could go more than 5 innings. I mean, you had Quintana go 5 2/3. No one could get out of the 6th inning. No one could do it. So since everyone's going 5, it's like Ron Darling was saying, you get 5 from your starters and then 4 from the bullpen. It's almost equal. That's not supposed to happen. And, to Rhodes' point, the Mets don't have the bullpen for this to happen, because that means that you're counting on Yohan Ramirez to be your setup man in the 8th inning. It means that you're counting on Michael Tonkin in extra innings twice because you had to use all your other good arms. The Mets don't have this kind of super bullpen. And you know what? A guy like Brett Suter, you could say, he's not that great, whatever. But look what he did for Cincinnati. He won a few innings. They didn't have to max out their bullpen. I think that the Mets have too many 1-inning relievers. And these guys are not good enough to all just be your 1-inning relievers. You got to have at least, we talked about it a bunch of times. A long man, a guy that goes multiple innings is so valuable, especially now in this modern game of baseball that I'm like, how are they going to actually navigate this next week or two with literally no rested arms? Because everyone can only pitch. No one can pitch consecutive days already because of the situation that they were in this past week. That's insane. It really is. And, call me an old man or whatever, but it's changed. The way starters are utilized, they and what's crazy is that even with starting pitchers not pitching as much as they used to, they'll all still get hurt. That's crazy that these guys are pitching less, yet getting hurt more. It's a crazy game that they're playing right now. And, the person, like the fan in me, the jealous person in me, Steve Cohen has all this money. He invested in a massive scoreboard. I wish he would have invested in a retractable roof, because then your team would actually be more beneficial. You want to start winning games, Steve Cohen? You want to get return on your investment? How about a roof so your team has off days? Not a big-ass scoreboard. That ain't going to help you win nothing.
And don't even get me started on the dance team. All right.
Well, I mean, that's a whole nother investment.
And that brings me to my point, especially with what we saw from this series, the main example of that. Every single thing that you just said, all can be solved with a 6-man rotation. Senga's out. You don't really have any big update on him. McGill might get back in a few weeks, but again, you don't even know if he's capable to be a starter workload anymore. That extra day of rest, because not to mention what you have right now. What did they say before that Tiger series started? The Mets had 15 games in 14 days.
Yes. Yep.
Extra day of rest for that rotation piece. And not to mention that 6th arm can also be a long relief piece if you need him. You get an extra day of rest for every single one of these pitchers. They can pitch at more of max effort without getting hurt with that extra day of rest. They can also provide, with that max effort, more of the game's best defense, which is strikeouts. Not to mention, with the defense you're getting right now, you had volume issues because of age, fatigue, and health last year. This year, you're having volume issues because the defense looked like a bunch of chickens with their heads cut off.
I tweeted it, but I asked myself, I'm like, is the defense this bad? Or is the coaching bad? Or is it both?
We can do a separate episode on how bad the coaching is. I don't even want to get into that.
They can't catch a ball. They don't know where each other are positioned. Brett admitted he didn't know where Lindor was. You had Narvaez getting fooled with a little league play, with the guy stealing home. This guy was a veteran on the team, one of the oldest guys on the team. The stuff that just happens game in, game out in the field. If the ball gets hit in the infield, you're holding your breath because you're like, I mean, what's going on here? And it's like you said, we don't have the offense to overcome that. You don't have the bullpen to overcome that. And, like Roda said, but these pitchers having those 10 extra pitches, those 12 extra pitches, that's another inning.
They add up. I mean, they add up. They stack.
In the long run. A combination of, if you're bad in a lot of different areas, you're bad at the plate, you're bad in the field, it's hard to win ball games. And right now they're 3-6 and what have you, but I just think that long term it's okay, sure, Nimmo hit, his hits start to fall, Lindor doesn't play this bad, okay, those things are fine, but if the bullpen is going to be this taxed to the point you're just going to leave a guy out there no matter how many runs he gives up, the offense is good enough to overcome that. I just think that, Yaxel Rios, just when you're looking at the arms, unless you want to carry a third lefty and Nate Lavender, because, a lot of these other guys, Kyle Crick is hurt. As we know, Montes de Oca hurt.
Kyle Crick actually started for St. Lucie today on a rehab assignment.
Kyle Crick, okay. So at least he's kind of, trying to work his way back. But right now it's do you run the risk of Fujinami and his walk problem? Do they start up that experiment again, because there's more upside with a Fujinami than a Yohan Ramirez or Michael Tonkin, but it's stuff like this where it's hard. Again, it's hard to watch on multiple areas, but it's too early in the season to be in a tough spot, and you're like, okay, now we're just gonna sign Julio Teheran and now go face the best offense in the league.
I would just like to say about Fujinami is not an option to me at all. I think the door on Fujinami's almost completely closed. The dude he's hitting everybody, he's walking everybody in AAA. Like, it's not happening. I hate to be so negative, but like his command is just so messed up.
There is another option that if he stopped hitting batters, he would be a great option in AAA as known as Grant Hartwig. You know, he does have, whether it's the separation on the sinker and the slider, he does have a cutter in there, but also he knows how to get these ground balls. The problem is that you're worried about, can they actually turn the damn double play? Because there's been so many fundamentally sound issues so far in these first 9 games, 10 games, something like that. It's just been a big concern, not to mention with defense. Another point I want to point out, if Omar Narvaez didn't have that such great game offensively, I would have sat on the bench with you, Frank, on that. He would be my next DFA out of here. Because dear God, Yohan Ramirez was not good in that 8th inning. He didn't do him any favors whatsoever. Not to mention another thing that we can add here, which again, this can be a whole other topic. Yohan Ramirez was basically put out there to die, basically. Yes, I understand you don't have any options. They pushed him there.
But doing something like that, you could, because you're trying to save those other arms, you could have got him hurt doing it.
Here's the problem with what they did. I understand you were taxed. If you were going to leave him out there, fine. I get it. Shit scenario. Here's the problem. You have him out there, clearly rattled. Defensive miscues, basically on the Steven Matz level of completely rattled. Defensive miscues, walking batters, hitting batters. Where's Jeremy Hefner?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Where's Jeremy Hefner?
Oh, God. Don't get me started with him. Oh.
Where's Omar Narvaez? Where's he going out to the mound? This is the problem with this game. Not to mention, I love my talent, my high profile velocity, my high stuff or whatever, my strikeout stuff coming out of the bullpen. But there's also a mental game to it. If your pitcher is clearly rattled, you go out there and you talk to him before it's too late, before the game gets out of hand. And where the hell was he? That's one of my main problems with Jeremy Hefner. Again, not to mention, we can go into a huge in-depth analysis of how Jeremy Hefner is limiting a lot of this. We could also go into a deep analysis of what he's done well that kind of shades a lot of the shit that he hasn't been able to do. The same thing happened with Sean Manaea too. He hit 2 batters or whatever. Where the hell is Jeremy Hefner? For some reason, the Mets coaching staff sometimes, they're not quick on their feet. Like, they don't make the quick adjustment. They don't see something and right away, before they stop the bleeding, they just let it go. And again, I understand having Ramirez in the game. You had to have him in the game. You had nobody available. But do you get a fine if you go out to the mound? Like, what is the deal? I see Alvarez go out to the mound more than Narvaez, more than Hefner, even more than the manager sometimes. When a 22-year-old is showing you up, that's insane.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. He's the youngest guy, but he seems to have the most smarts.
Narvaez, like, he's really confusing because he used to be a catcher who could hit but couldn't catch.
Yeah.
Then he turned into a catcher that could catch but couldn't hit. And now it seems like he's just regressed.
Now he can't do anything.
He was brought in to be a defensive catcher, to mentor a guy like Francisco Alvarez. Alvarez, obviously, he took the job and ran away with it.
He's looking pretty McCannish out there.
He looks like the rookie catcher.
Tomas Nido will frame the pitches, will make the quick throw to second base when they're stealing from his knees. Tomas Nido will do that. He will do that. He will play good defense.
I mean, I said this on Twitter a few days ago, and it just continued to be right over and over again as it continued to get painful to see this guy behind the plate. Here's what I said. I literally said, Omar Narvaez has been here for less than 2 years. All I have seen him do consistently is commit interference, call garbage on 2 strikes, and lollipop throws to second and third. It's hard to believe that before he was a Met, he was one of the best defensive catchers in baseball. I mean, seriously, what a fall from grace. That's insane. I don't care what he does, to be honest, on offense. If you're not providing the defense that you were paid to give us to, Jesus Christ. There's tons of backup catchers that I'd rather have here that can actually provide those type of defensive intangibles. He's been awful.
That would be so valuable to have that, though. Like, I would take 2022 Tomas Nido in a heartbeat as our backup. Look, he's a 72 bat. Who cares? He's the backup. Like, he plays elite, like, genuinely elite defense. Like, I would so take Tomas Nido right now.
Also, that other catcher we have in Syracuse, what's his name? Austin Allen? He's a pretty good defender as well. He also can hit some bombs. Yeah, I mean...
Nido had a minus 24 WRC plus last year.
I mean, yeah, he can't hit for his life.
I don't know if he's a solution, but, like, you could trade for a solid defensive... Like, trade for Trevino. I'm sure the Yankees would like to get rid of him. Like, They have Austin Wells, they have other guys. I mean, they got rid of Higashioka, so and Narvaez would have been the perfect fit as the backup catcher if he were what we signed him. If he were his Milwaukee defense with their insane catching lab, we would have been fine. He would have been awesome as the backup. But it is what it is.
I'm just not seeing it whatsoever. I always saw, even though they had so much success with the Burns, Woodruff, Peralta, or whatever that rotation was in Milwaukee the last few years, you saw Omar Narvaez not only be a huge contributor to their success, but it just seemed like he knew how to dial these guys in as well, like if they were in a jam. And you just don't see that. There's just no one to take that initiative quickly. They always wait to the last second. They always wait until the bleeding already starts. It's just a little too stressful of a series to call it a series win. Now, speaking of more pitching, the Mets actually made an addition to the rotation this week, signing free agent right-handed pitcher Julio Teheran to a 1-year, $2.5 million deal following another rotation injury to Tyler McGill last week. Teheran is now 33 years old and coming off a brief but solid campaign with Milwaukee last year, posting a 4.40 earned run average, a 4.93 fielding independent pitching, striking out 17.4% of batters across 71.2 innings pitched and 14 total appearances. Teheran is a soft-tossing contact manager with a sinker fastball combo that sits in the low 90s and tops 93 miles an hour, a high 80s cutter, screwball-style changeup, and a high-spin sliding curveball hybrid pitch with over 2,600 RPMs. With solid control and command, Teheran has the occasional home run problem, but can excel from the stretch with solid ground ball stuff. A week or two ago, Teheran demanded release from his minor league deal with the Orioles after a very impressive spring campaign, and the newly acquired right-hander will make his Mets debut against his former team in Atlanta on Monday, which already occurred once this podcast episode is premiering. I went live for this, so I don't really need to go crazy into it.
I don't want to sound like a stern shill, but I kind of love this. I genuinely think that this team needs a Trevor Williams type arm in there. So if the game gets out of hand, or if we're up a lot, or if we just need it, you have a guy who can go multiple innings and be competitive at least, which I think Julio Teheran is probably a 4.5 ERA guy like last year. So I think like this is a move. The Mets need a Trevor Williams guy in there to eat innings. Especially when a double headers happen in garbage time. You can't just waste all the arms in your bullpen. Here's what I'll say. Like Julio Teheran, great 2019 in Atlanta. He has more velocity. He has more sink. He has more run on his sinker. Stuff-wise, he's like the exact same pitcher. And if you want to look at another thing, he walked 4% of batters, 4.5% of batters he faced last year. Like I wouldn't be too surprised if he's actually like gives us a chance to win some games. And you need a Trevor Williams type reliever / starter in here, in my opinion. I've wanted that even last year. I thought we were really missing that. So, I really like this move. I'm not expecting him to be sub 4 ERA guy like he was in 2019. I don't think it's a totally just like pathetic garbage can, like dumpster diving move. Like starting pitching depth.
Dumpster Dave!
That's it. That a guy like Joey Lucchesi even would have done this role really well. Honestly, I'd probably rather him do this. But, Teheran's command is really, really great. Let's just see how it plays out. I think people are expecting him to get have a 20 ERA, which could be the case after tomorrow against the Braves especially. But I think if you look at he's not going to be in the rotation. Like in a week, probably. He's not going to be consistently starting games every 5-6 days. He won't be in the 5-man. He won't be in the 6-man. Unless he's like absolutely horrible. Like he's going to give us the Trevor Williams role, which is something I think this team must have, especially with the lack of defense, tiring of our bullpen arms. We need someone like this to be in here. And it doesn't have to be some insanely incredible arm, which we don't have. I like this move. I'm not expecting much out of it. I don't see the problem. I think it actually fills a need that we really do have. If Teheran can give us 4 innings, 2 runs, maybe 5 innings, 2 runs tomorrow, I will be on top of the moon.
The only thing that, stings about that is obviously there's a bit of a home run problem with Julio Teheran. Throwing him into the fire against Atlanta, not ideal. After an impressive spring. We'll see what does happen. Frank, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it was a move that they were kind of forced to make. We knew with the Senga injury they were going to be shorthanded. We knew with the David Pearson injury they were going to be shorthanded. Add on McGill, add on the doubleheader of using Jose Budo, and it's like you just need an arm to make a start. Like we said, 15 games in 14 days. Again, a guy like Joe Lucchesi technically could have been available if his starts had aligned correctly. For whatever reason, this current regime is not high on the guy. I mean, he got sent down pretty early in the spring training. He didn't really get a fair chance to actually make the team. So they did need an extra arm to be a starter. So a guy like Julio Teheran, they'll give it a chance. I think it's more so just a guy that's there to make starts. I think that's ultimately what it comes down to is you just needed another arm. And the other issue is that, like, it's not like, oh, well, why don't you just call somebody from Syracuse? Unfortunately, while there are quality arms in Syracuse, they're just not ready yet. They're just very young. You have your guys, like your Dom Hamels, you have your Christian Scotts, you have your Mike Vassos. Like, they're just a little young. They don't want to just rush. They don't want to call them up early and rush them up early just because of like the injuries and the rain and all that stuff. So they're going with the veteran arm, give those young guys enough time to need to develop this way. When they do get called up, they are ready to go. So again, based off of the current situation and the roster that they have, it was just a move that they had to make just to have enough guys to make the starts necessary.
What I've really have admired a lot from David Stearns, especially with additions like this, he really has not, whether you believe it or not, he really has not lied in the sense where he really has taken into real deep consideration of all the options out there that could improve this team. We went into spring training basically saying they're not getting anybody else. They like what they have. And ever since then, they've gotten JD Martinez. They have gotten Julio Teheran. Not to mention what we saw, like, going into spring training as well, when they talked about, like, they have about 10 million to 15 million kind of set aside for the trade deadline. Well, let's see. You have about 9 million that you have with the luxury tax with JD Martinez. You have about 5 to 6 million. So you have about 14 million you have spent since that was announced by Andy Martino. Again, it's Andy Martino. 15 million-ish for the trade deadline. You have just kind of spent that right now. So it will be interesting. One thing I will say, this isn't Ariel Geraldo levels of crap. This is not quadruple A type of pieces. This is somebody with experience. They have been in the majors. They know what it's like to give you innings. Not to mention, like Rode just said, a Trevor Williams role that has really needed to be cemented somehow, whether it is as a sixth arm in the rotation that could also be a long reliever if your starter does not go deep. Julio Teheran, again, they had some consideration of putting him in the game this week. I don't know if that means that they are going to have a six-man rotation like that. A lot of people have been saying so far this season, all the arms in this rotation are 5-inning arms, which can be true, but you can turn them into 6 and 7 arms if you give them that extra day of rest. Like I've said, I think that that's the way they can maximize this, not just right now, but also with Kodai Senga, who also needs an extra day of rest as well. When he gets back, he's probably going to need even more rest. Maybe he might need an entire week off with his shoulder injury. We don't know how the ramp up is going to go up with that. We still don't have an update. For the Mets' current rotation, the Mets need to look at it from an approach of maximizing the talent. Because I'm currently going into this saying that the defense has continued to screw us. Even though run prevention was a big priority, the Mets need their pitchers to go deep into games. And the best way to do that is to get in a more easier way where it does not weigh down on the pitcher from the defense screwing up. And that's how I look at it from these sinker ballers that we have in the rotation. And, these guys who, on a regular get you 5 innings, but you can maximize a little bit more with that extra day of rest. And they do have deep enough depth. Not as deep, but they do have deep enough depth where they can maximize that talent, where whether it is bringing up Budo or reevaluating somebody like McGill, Julio Teheran kind of flip-flopping from a start to the bullpen, because he did do that last year with Milwaukee. So I am interested to see how they do. address this. I'm hoping that the days of a 5-man rotation, for what we've seen, the days are limited, especially with them adding somebody like Julio Teheran, even though it looks like just a McGill replacement, with McGill kind of having a very minor injury. I'm hoping that they take that quantity into account and actually apply it to their advantage and not just say, well, since the beginning of time, we've had a 5-man rotation. We need a 5-man rotation. You've come to a point where you need a 6-man rotation. And if you need more proof of that, look at all the pitchers just getting hurt constantly. The top line pitchers getting hurt that are really important to all of these teams. Shane Bieber, Spencer Strider. I mean,
Perez,
it's happening.
The days of 5-man rotations are quickly coming to an end, I think.
Again, like I say, with all these things that go on in baseball in an accelerated game, it's either you adapt or die. You can fight it as much as you want. You can complain about it as much as you want. These pitchers aren't tough enough anymore. Or you can make the adjustment to put you in the best position to win. And that's what a 6-man rotation does at this current moment. Now, through all the stress and through all the stagnant offense so far this year, there's been 2 Mets hitters that have been on a tear to start the season. Those being the young pieces and former prospects, Francisco Alvarez and Brett Baty. To start 2024, the Mets' rising star catch is slashing .333, .379, .556 with a 155 weighted runs created plus across 29 plate appearances with a home run and 4 extra base hits. The 22-year-old has continued to impress defensively as well, landing in the 95th percentile in catcher framing and the 67th percentile in pop time to second base, and also with a grain of salt on a pace for a 7-win season. The Mets' young third baseman has also started off hot, slashing .290, .353, .387 with a 110 weighted runs created plus across 34 plate appearances. In addition, Baty has been very impressive at the hot corner with serviceable value and key defensive plays down the stretch of multiple games so far this season.
If anyone's ever seen a single episode with me on it, you know how I feel about Francisco Alvarez. I love him. I think he's, everyone knows he's super talented, but I expect him to definitely be a good player. And, I think just he had the good rookie year power wise, but I think that, the following year we're going to see a more complete player. And that's what we've seen, the increase in the batting average, the overall OPS, just all his numbers are up, just more discipline at the plate, better pitch selection, all that stuff. He's constantly improving defensively. So I love everything about him. You know that. Brett Baty is the one that I think is the real key here, though, because, we expected Alvarez to be productive. Baty, I didn't. I have to be honest with you. I mean, we've talked about it a ton. I've been hard on him. There's been a lot of pressure on him, and it's because they need him to be the guy. They need a third baseman because, like we've talked about, ever since David Wright retired, there just hasn't been much production at that position. We've seen a lot of different guys come and go. He was supposed to be the guy, top, like I say all the time, top third base prospect in all of base, one of the top in all of baseball, high expectations. Hadn't happened yet, but so far this season, he's got off to a good start. Improvement defensively, definitely. Still some mistakes, some ugly plays and what have you. But I just think offensively, he's kind of hitting the ball all over the field, which I think is good to see. I think that's the kind of player that if he's going to be good, that's going to be his MO. He's going to be a guy that kind of hits it everywhere, which is not your favorite, but he can't, just because you want him to be something, if that's not what he is, he just has to do what is going to provide value and production. It may not be the kind of production you want, but it's better than nothing. And that's what he was giving. He was giving close to nothing. He was giving negative production. I mean, that's how bad he was. So, with his performance and with the other guys struggling, both of them been batting right in the middle of the order. And you know what? They've earned it because everyone else has been not everyone, but most of the guys have been so bad. So I think for Baty, this is a big year for him, and he's not gonna hit 300 like the way he's basically hitting now. But I think what's all said and done, it's like I've said, my hope is that if he could just be a little above average, that on both sides is all I'm really asking for. Just be a starting caliber player, because, these other guys that are getting paid a lot of money, Lindor, Nimmo, hopefully Alonso, they're supposed to carry the team. And Baty is just another complimentary, solid piece that's just a starter. And if he could just kind of level out to be that and just, again, be a productive player, then I think that'd be very encouraging for the Mets, not for this year, but again, for the future. They're going to have just long term kind of have to figure out who's going to play where, especially once Jet Acuna and these guys get here. So it's important for Brett to be like, no, I still have value. I am a major league player. So I'm very happy for him, and obviously as a fan, I'm happy that he's playing well, helps the team. So I've been surprisingly encouraged by Brett Baty. Alvarez, I kind of expect him to improve. And again, he's not going to be a 7-win player, not going to be OPS over 900. But I think just that steady improvement on both sides of the ball is something that will happen for him.
What we haven't seen yet, a consistent piece of power with Brett Baty. He did have that great homer against the lefty in the Milwaukee series. But other than that, we really haven't seen much of a display of power. But I will say the first step has been taken so far to display more power. And that has been lifting the ball. He's done that a lot better so far, which is really good. And once again, like you said, from what I don't want to see, the thing about Baty is that he has such great bat speed. He's so quick to get to the ball. Even though he does have a small barrel window sometimes, which he needs to work on that consistently, he could give you that type of power with that bat speed he has. And that's why it frustrates me when I see the guy go the other way or give me a lazy fly ball to left field. That's Jeff McNeil's job. He's an idiot. Baty, on the other hand, he has the bat speed to do that and catch up to fastballs, catch up to these types of pitches, and display you a little bit more power as compared to some of the other pieces at the bottom of the lineup.
Well, as for we're talking about Baty's bat, I'm still in wait and see mode with Baty's bat, which is what it sounds like a lot of us are, because I still am seeing Brett Baty take inside pitches oppo. Which is something I don't like seeing that personally. He has the best bat speed on the team, actually. That's he does have the recorded highest bat speed on the Mets, which is pretty insane. I've said this before. I'm giving Baty till June to show me something offensively, and he has. He's that glove. His defense looks incredible. He's making every single play. He's jumping in front of Lindor. This is huge. If Brett Baty is a good defensive third baseman, that's massive. That's absolutely massive. And that's been incredible to watch. I've had a joy watching him play defensively. I am seeing some of the trends from last year. I'm not sure how different his bat path looks. There are clips from last year where Baty, his barrel window, might been the smallest in all of baseball. He is pulling the ball more, which is great. I just want to see him hit for some more power. I want to see what he looks like in June, because I still do think there's a chance Baty's kind of a bust offensively. But I also think there's a chance he won't be a bust offensively because of how incredible his bat speed is. And he's been taking a lot of pitches. He's been making good swing decisions. And there's a lot of things to be encouraged by. While I'm optimistic, I still want to see more.
The one main concern I'd say is obviously the breaking ball, which is still look like a problem. He still just seems like he has a few parts of the zone where he does have some holes in his swing, which kind of sucks. What is he, 6'3"? So, it might take a while for him to figure out how to reach down and get some of those pitches, as compared to somebody like Pete Alonso, which I don't even know how the hell he hit that pitch against Detroit. That was ridiculous. But again, like we've said, with guys like the raw power that Brett Baty has, there is a strong possibility where he could be one of these pull hitters that can be pure fly ball line drive hitter, but he needs to put it all together consistently. And I think that, I will say, the top of the lineup not showing and contributing the way that we expect them to so far this season. You've definitely seen Baty and Alvarez back them up and cover a lot of sins that has been going on with runners in scoring position, such as Lindor, even Alonso, sometimes Nimmo as well. And obviously, those guys have to start performing. It's good to see your young players adding to that foundation. Speaking of those star players, to start 2024, Mets shortstop Francisco Lindor has begun the season in a 3-for-43 slump. As per usual, Mets fans have taken notice, leading to Lindor's wife Katia to reveal multiple vile and disgusting Instagram messages on Twitter earlier this week. With a majority of Mets fans in defense of Lindor and his family, ex-users RSA Diamond Tails and Alvarez Met for Life collaborated together on Twitter for Mets fans to give the star shortstop a standing ovation when the Mets return home later this week. Mets owner Steve Cohen responded and endorsed the idea, stating that he loves the idea. It worked in Philly with Turner. Positivity goes a long way. However, Lindor did get it going in the series finale in Cincinnati, going 2 for 3 with a home run and a double. The frustration has continued to mount on social media, media regarding the $341 million shortstop start to the 2024 season.
I love this. Like, guys, like, look, let's put on the peaceful music for a second, okay?
Oh,
Guys, why must we attack our star shortstop's wife and his children? He is trying his best. He is our shortstop. We must live in peace and positivity and supporting our players. We must have our shortstops back, and we must cheer him on next home game, and we must show him the love that he has given us as fans.
Okay. He'd get an egg thrown in his face in New York City.
like you said, I feel like we've done this show for a few years now, and I feel like we've talked about it just about every single year. I mean, as soon as the guy has a slump, he's a bust, he's overpaid, boo him, this, that. I'm so tired of it, honestly. And I'm not talking about Lindor. I'm just talking about just the whole the topic, the conversation. I'm over it. You know what I mean? I just think that he put together like this awesome season last year. He did it all for the team. It's all, the way the fans are, especially in New York, it's all, what have you done for me lately? If he has an amazing May, they'll love him. He has an awful June, they'll boo him. That's just the reality of playing in New York. And you know what? And it's hard to say, because I'm like, what would it take? Would the Mets have to win a World Series for this conversation to stop? But we don't know, because we haven't seen it happen. We haven't seen them win the championships in everyone knows how long. So at this point, I'm over it. I'm like, you know what? Obviously, we're all in agreement. He's more talented than the numbers show. The fact that he had the good game against Cincinnati, that's encouraging. He'll be better than what has happened. I think all in all, like, it hasn't been 10 games yet. You know what I mean? Like, if we're in July and he's hitting like under 200, okay, time to panic. But in 10 games, I mean, come on. I mean, we've had this conversation before. We've seen him be bad. We've seen him be good. And we've said it, like, people just have to accept he's a streaky hitter. That's how it is with him. And right now, he just happened to start off on a cold streak. I mean, that's just where we're at right now. So, I think that once all said and done, he'll put together his, however many WAR season and what have you. And it's just something that as he's hot and cold, Met fans are going to be hot and cold with him. I mean, unfortunately, that's just the reality of playing in New York. Should they cheer him? It's worth the shot. I mean, why not? I mean, we've done the booing for so long. Let's see what happens. I'm not opposed to it. But again, I'm just tired of it. Really, fans are they're very fickle. They love you one day, they hate you the next day. That's just the game that it is.
When people on Twitter are trying to kind of spread a little bit of positivity, it will always get a bad image and a good image. There's always two sides to Mets Twitter, no matter what, to sports Twitter. There will always be that response of telling fans how to fan. And that's the biggest criticism as to why they would say Lindor should not get the cheer, or he should continue to get booed, or, why fans have every reason to be frustrated. They do have every reason to be frustrated. Not to mention, it's kind of just been accepted as a way of life in New York, where you don't play well, you're gonna get booed. Not to mention, I always say this all the time to, a lot of other sports fans with other Mets fans, not to mention like Raiders fans and Rangers fans, all the fan bases. They're the shareholders of the team. They have every right to give out their displeasure of how the team is playing. You want to boo? You have every right to do that. Fine. You paid the tickets to do it. You do whatever the hell you want. Just don't do anything illegal. But it's going to happen. It just naturally is going to happen. That's just kind of how the hostile environment is in New York sports. If you want to criticize, fairly criticize, make jokes or whatever, make, out of pocket jokes on Twitter that are harmless, go ahead. Odds are somebody is going to find it funny. I do it too. I make a bunch of sarcastic jokes all the time. When it comes to a different level of overstepping that boundary where you're attacking the player's family, at one point you have to realize that at one point you can't really classify those people as fans, for one way. And again, that probably fits into the category of me saying, telling a fan how to fan, but there's a certain like invisible line that you draw in the sand that you don't cross. I went after James McCann a lot, okay? I did not like James McCann. I was not a big fan of him. But I wasn't going into his wife's DMs, and there were people doing that too. I wasn't going into those wife's DMs and threatening to kill him. At the end of the day, outside of the game, these guys are human beings. Again, this isn't telling a fan not to fan. Stuff like this vile stuff of going and attacking a player's family, it's just inhumane. Like, for no reason at all, it should be happening. But people sometimes take sports into their entire personality and they try to show their passion, and it ends up having them look like, at the end of the day, a bunch of pieces of shit. Then that's kind of what you're seeing right now. Again, we've seen these slumps before with Lindor. I have no doubt he's going to get out of it. Not to mention, I could throw as much data as I can as to why I think that Francisco Lindor is going to be fine. Once he starts hitting again, which he will, we know he will because he sustained that throughout his career, they're going to love him again. Is there a lot of hypocritical play when it comes to fans? Absolutely. For me, I'm very, particular of what I like and dislike. But again, there is just a line that you don't cross. That is one of them. Again, I'm not trying to police anything or whatever, or tell people how to fan, but anybody in their decent mind would know that sending death threats to a player's family who has nothing to do with the game whatsoever is disgusting. And it should go without being said. It should be implied that you shouldn't do that. But with the internet being the internet, you have access to do that. So, people are going to take advantage of that situation. People are going to take advantage of that luxury to do so. It creates a very toxic environment. Listen, I don't care what they do, to be honest. Give them a standing ovation. Don't give them a standing ovation. I don't care. But all I can say is that if they do this, you're still going to get a positive or negative backlash. The whole look as to, well, nothing goes well for the Mets. Trey Turner got his standing ovation. He homered right after it. Lindor just grounded out to second. It just never works for the Mets. We're completely cursed. That's the type of image it's going to get if it does not work. I'm just saying it'll get a lot more ridicule if it does not work. I'm not saying don't do it. Do it. I don't care. He's your shortstop. He's going to be here to the end of his contract. I hope he retires as a Met because I love Francisco Lindor. This 10-game stretch, we all know, does not define him as a hitter. And we all know that eventually he's going to come out of it. So now that brings us to everybody's favorite segment, studs and duds. Now, Rode had to leave early, but he did give us his studs and duds, so we will fill him in right here. His stud, he put in Luis Severino after a great outing in Cincinnati. Jake Diekman, which, has been a little bit of shaky, so I kind of understand that a little bit. So one player that we want to give flowers to has played very well. One player that we want to criticize. Let's not completely go after them after what we've seen on social media recently.
It's got to be Sean Manaea. I've really been very encouraged by what I saw. He's someone that, when they signed him, he was just very interesting because of, the work that he did with Driveline and just the feeling that, the numbers were kind of misleading because, he had his down period stretches, but he also had like some positive things and just kind of believing that, with Stearns and all that stuff, that he could just turn out to just be a solid pitcher, just like believing that there's more than what we've seen, that he can kind of get back on track, because this is a guy that was a good pitcher. It's not like this is his first time ever having a good season. So I think that, seeing him first two starts, both of them are very solid. It wasn't just like a one start, but now, back-to-back starts, very encouraging. And he's a guy that, the expectations are still very low. He's someone that, like, when they signed, not everyone was particularly thrilled about it, but I think that you have to be very encouraged, all things considered, based off what they gave him. So we'll see how the rest of the season ultimately plays out. He's not going to finish with a ERA under 0 or 2 or even 3. But I think but I think just the fact that both of his starts have been very solid. He got into some tough spots. Again, I found it interesting that like he hit 2 batters on 0-2 counts with cutters, and they're both right-handed. So I think that, trying to make that adjustment of how he's going to use that new pitch against right-handed hitters is going to be something he's supposed to work on. But I think all in all, the high velo, still hitting 95 on the gun, sweepers got good movement. Like there still are like plenty of things to be encouraged by. So I think that, I've been happy, all in all, from what I've seen from him.
Yeah, he's been one of my favorite pitchers in the game for a long time when he was with Oakland, because, I have a big warm spot for Oakland, even more now with the whole situation right now there. Don't even get me started. But it's really interesting because, yeah, he's 32 years old, but it just seems like there's so many endless possibilities of upside with him still, not just mentioned with the drive line, but like also it seems like every single start wants to continue to outplay his last start. Like that's what I think that is something that he really dials in to do, because you see him constantly talking about the adjustments. Maybe that is more influenced by driveline, but we've also seen him like after the results that he had last year, after that whole adjustment he made with driveline, we're also seeing, oh yeah, I'm adding a cutter, working on my changeup. He really wants to be a really good pitcher. And again, another arm, like I've said throughout this entire episode, especially in the recaps. I think he's one of the guys that is a perfect 6-man arm. And, he can get you the best defense known as strikeouts at will on 5 days rest. What about on 6 days rest? I mean, you could see a few 8, 9, 10 strikeout performances from Sean Manaea if you give him the ability to maximize his talent. As for my stud, I'm going to go with a very unconventional one, but I think that he did deserve it because it did help us get our first win of the season. I'm going to give it to Reed Garrett because 3 scoreless innings in relief, and not to mention this guy was coming off the bus from AAA, and, we didn't know what his deal was. We didn't know how fully rested he was because AAA was playing their games. They started off their season. He does kind of have the notorious walk problem, but he came in and he saved so much of the situation that they needed that so much. He kept them in the game, and then eventually we walked it off, and they got their first win of the season. So he definitely was a big part of turning this season in the right direction as compared to what we saw in the first few games where they pretty much were a lifeless team. Let's be real for a second. They got at least the first jolt, the first decent sign of the season, and one of the unspoken heroes of that has been Reed Garrett. Jose Butto was good too, but Reed Garrett came out of nowhere, 3 innings of relief. I don't know if we killed him or not, but I was very satisfied to see what I got because he does have good stuff. He just needs to get the thing over the plate. And we saw the peak performance of Reed Garrett's Mets career because he's been here for a little bit.
No, I mean, like you said, it just going 0-6, getting swept the doubleheader, and especially by
on the brink
Tigers.
of 0-6.
Yeah, especially by the Tigers. Like that's the other thing too, is that like they have this record right now, and it's not like they've been playing these great teams. That's the very frustrating part about it. Like, the player, and it's because, as we'll get to, it's like the players are just supposed to be better. Like the guys who are not performing right now, they're expected to perform much better than what we've seen. So, these are the results. But you're right. I mean, he really bailed them out in that game because it would have been tough to. It just, like you say, you don't want the bad season to continue to get worse, and really have the season end before it really begins, so to speak. So, he definitely deserves a lot of props. I second.
And speaking of those guys that aren't contributing.
So I talked to him earlier, but again, I got to go to DJ Stewart. I think, just the fact that the position he's playing is called designated hitter, and he does not have a single hit this season. He's drawing walks, but you know what? Everybody on the team is drawing walks. So it doesn't do much. Like if you're a DH, you're not there to draw walks. You're there to get hits. And he reminds me so much of Daniel Vogelbach at the plate right now. That's not a compliment. That is not a good thing from your DH. Like, and again, it's more so like, what do they do with this guy? Because again, he's just a placeholder until JD Martinez comes here. I get that. But you have to send him down. Like, again, I wouldn't pinch run him. He's too slow to pinch run. He's not good enough to pinch hit, and he's not a good fielder to make him a late game replacement. So why would you even have him on the roster in any capacity?
You said it earlier. They were content with bringing in this roster before the JD Martinez. And if that did happen at the trend it's going from what we've seen from DJ Stewart, that was just another Vogelbach situation. And that's the main reason why I'm not upset about DJ Stewart as much, because I know he's going to be out of here. One thing I will say, putting him in against Hunter Green, absolute joke. Complete joke. That was just stupid. He doesn't look like he can handle velocity as of right now. Overall, I mean, DJ Stewart, it was fun while it lasted, but it's gonna let's just move on from it. And we know that it's coming. So the casualty's gonna come eventually, and it makes sense. I'm gonna go with Francisco Lindor because I think that you can't really go wrong with either Lindor or Pete Alonso, mainly just because of the workload that they take in this offense, and they just really were not performing. I'm going to go with Lindor. I also can slide Alonso in there, but this is not coming off of I'm frustrated with them because I know that they're going to come out of this. It's just basically of what I have seen so far, and they are the main contributors of the offense. The offense has not been good in a vacuum. Lindor and Alonso are the duds, but quickly can turn into studs because I know that they're going to snap out of it. They're going to be fine. Your rapid fire stories for this week. The Mets have placed right-handed pitcher Tyler McGill on the injured list with a right shoulder strain. Mets manager Carlos Mendoza said on Saturday that he will be reevaluated in a couple days and could start a throwing progression if all goes well. The Mets also recalled right-handed pitcher Reed Garrett from AAA Syracuse as the corresponding move. Mets outfield prospect Drew Gilbert has been placed on the injured list with a mild hamstring strain. Gilbert sustained the injury during Saturday's game for AAA Syracuse while sprinting down the line to first base. The Yankees have signed former Mets pitcher Phil Bickford. Bickford was acquired by the Mets at the trade deadline from the Dodgers for cash considerations and was DFA'd/released by the Mets as the corresponding move for JD Martinez. As the corresponding move for Julio Teheran, the Mets have designated right-handed pitcher Michael Tonkin for assignment. Tonkin signed a $1 million split deal with the Mets this offseason and was snake-bitten in the midst of back-to-back blow-ups against Detroit earlier this week. Mets DH JD Martinez will not be joining the Mets this week in Atlanta after experiencing enough typical ramp-up soreness to rule the decision out. JDM played 2 games this week for Single-A Port St. Lucie and will get 2 days off before the next step is taken on Tuesday. Mets prospect Anthony Baptist has been suspended after lying about his age and identity. Baptist's false age was listed at 17 years old amid his $1.1 million signing bonus that he received last year. Former Mets pitcher Pat Zachary has passed away at the age of 71. Zachary was with the Mets for 6 years, but is most known for being one of the pieces acquired by the Mets in exchange for Hall of Fame pitcher and Mets all-time great Tom Seaver back in 1977. Parting words for episode number 47. Thank you to Rode, who had to leave early, but I think that he would say, "Let's go Mets." I'm channeling his ghost right now. But as for number 47...
Didn't Glavin wear it?
Who?
I think
who?
Glavin did.
I'm sorry, who? I'm sorry, who?
I know.
I don't know who you're talking about.
Well, it happened, so.
You are a 2007 kid. How dare you mention that name?
Really, just don't get swept by the Braves, hopefully, maybe. And then if you do, you really don't lose the series to the Royals. When I looked at the schedule, I was like, oh, at least the first month, there's not too many tough teams. So maybe they get off to a good start like they normally do in April. The fact that they haven't, that's really concerning. So just don't get absolutely embarrassed by the Braves and then just win the series against the Royals. That's really what it comes down to. I'm just looking for just be competitive. And I want to see at least one starting pitcher this week actually work deep into a game. And yes, there's multiple things that go into it. The defense needs to catch the ball, make the routine plays. But I'd like to see at least someone get laid because I don't want to do this day in, day out, bullpen this, bullpen that, who's available, who's not. It's tough to win like that.
The first week of the season was stressful. This week was less stressful, but still stressful. Let's make it a little bit less stressful than the last one. Let's just keep improving until we get to full strength with Kodai Senga. Hopefully when he comes back, we'll see what happens with there. JD Martinez. I'm waiting for this team to get in full strength to fully judge it. There's been things that I've liked. There's been things that I have disliked, but I'm not here to completely overreact. But, we're here to be brutally honest. That's pretty much our tagline of this podcast. And some of it may be reactionary. Some of it might be completely true and sustained throughout the entire year. But other than that, thank you for watching and listening. Make sure to follow us on Twitter and TikTok. We're doing a lot more content over there this year. Frank does his Mets Frankly post games every single day after every single game for 1 minute. Those go on TikTok, YouTube, Twitter. So make sure to go check those out for quick thoughts. You know, it's pretty hard for Frank because he likes to go on these rants. So I told him he only gets 1 minute, basically giving him the challenge of a lifetime after every single Mets game. But other than that, we'll see you guys next time. Let's go Mets. And like we always say, don't suck.